edition of Systematic Speaks. I am Zenfally, and we have Royalty. And today, we have the pleasure of having our guest, John Funderburk. John is going to discuss with us investing in a volatile market. Wouldn't we all like to learn how to have our money work for us instead of us working for it? So with that being said, let's get started and talk to John so we can learn a lot today about how to invest. First, let me tell you a little bit about John. John, at an early age, knew that his purpose in life was to serve others. His passion for service inspired him to serve in the United States Navy. Another passion that John has as an early 8-year-old was studying the business section of the newspaper. As his knowledge of the stock market and economy grew, so did his interest in educating others about personal finance. Since service was already a core value of John's, as a career in the financial service industries was a logical and natural fit for him. He relishes being able to pursue his interest in security and technical analysis, economics, and portfolio construction for his clients. John is active in his local church. He's a father of 5. He has 2 adult daughters, a son, and 2 beautiful adopted daughters. He lives in Frederick, Maryland. Welcome, John, to Systematic Speaks.
How you doing?
All right. So are you ready to teach us all about what we need to know about finances?
Absolutely. Let's get started.
Great. Royalty, I'll let you go first.
Great. Thanks again, John, for joining us today. So glad you're able to be on our platform and be able to share with our listeners and our viewers your expertise. So I'll just jump right into our first question. Please define investments and the various types of investments for our listening and viewing audience.
Well, there are many different investments, but what I want to focus on today primarily is what we call equities. Equities is basically you or I or someone looking at a company and actually buying into that company. So when you buy a stock, you are now part owner of that company, and you are eligible to receive that company's growth, dividends, and future earnings because you are now part owner. You actually receive a stock certificate. A lot of people don't see that because it's held at whichever company you buy the stock from, but you have physical certificates that name you, your entire name as owner. So if you buy stock in Apple, you are now part owner of Apple. You're not just a consumer, but you are part owner of that company. And that's how wealth is created. So a company will say, when a company goes public, they'll say, for example, I'm going to make $100 over the next year. So we as the investment community will normally pay approximately 21 times that. So that company will be worth about $2,100 because you want to include future earnings. So stocks will come out that will equal approximately $2,100, and all of us will buy a share of that. So we become part owners in that company. So when you're investing, you're not just buying a stock, but you're becoming an owner of that company. And that's the greatest way wealth is created, by becoming owners of American blue chip companies over a long period of time.
Wow. Okay. So share with us the various types of IRAs and stock market.
So you have to look at investing as different houses. So you know how you have a single family house, you have a townhouse, and you have a condominium. So basically, IRAs is like a single family home, and that you when you buy stock inside of that single family home, then that money cannot be taxed at all. So I can buy stock or buy a piece of furniture, move into that home, and I can move that furniture around as much as I want to, and I'm not paying taxes on my increases until I move out of the home. When I move out of the home, then I'm finally taxed. So you can look at an IRA as buying investments, moving into a house, and I can buy and sell within that home as much as I want, without having to pay taxes on my growth. I just pay taxes when I move out of the home at the time that you take your disbursement, which is normally at age 55 or older. Now you have individual accounts where that's like a condominium. It's kind of like, or an apartment where if I move into that apartment and I buy my stocks there, when I move again, every time I move, I'm taxed each time because it's more temporary. So if I buy Apple and I move it into that apartment, and then a year later I move it out of there, then I'm taxed for that no matter what. Whereas if it's an IRA, I buy Apple and I sell it, I'm not taxed until I move the entire account out of the house. So individual accounts is what most people have, because you're only allowed to contribute $6,000 a year into your IRA, or $19,000 into a 401k. 401k is typically on your job, and IRA is a individual retirement account. IRA, individual retirement account. 401k is from your job, where the account's already established. Now, the difference between a 401k and an IRA is that a 401k, the custodian is actually owned by the company. So when you contribute to your 401k, your company is actually in charge of that money. So your company is in your name, but the company is the custodian. So technically, if your IRA lost a lot of money, you can sue your company if you wanted to, because they are custodians of it. So I encourage everyone that when they switch companies and they have old 401ks, to roll it outside that company and put it in their name so they can't control it, because that company can take that money out anytime they want. Like if they're distressed or if they're losing money and they need to recapitalize, they can access that if they wanted to. That's supposed to, but they have access to it because they're the custodians. So a 401k is you're not the custodian, and IRA is you are the custodian. That's the difference.
Wow, that's very interesting. I never knew that. So I knew that there was a difference between a 401, but I did not know that a company can access that money. So that's interesting, and it makes me think differently about, as I transition and move up the career chain and go to different jobs, I need to ensure that I'm moving the money with me.
Yeah, yes, they're not supposed to, but if that company were to go out of business and you try to call that company to access your money, it's gone, because that company, it's been disbanded. And so there's no one to call or to communicate to get your money out. That assets go with that company.
Great information. So now that we know the differences between a 401 and IRA, you've talked about the stock market and buying into the market as well. Let's talk a little bit about risk, because people have to be comfortable with the risk that they're taking. So are there different levels of risk?
Okay, risk is measured by the safest investment on the planet right now is American U.S. Treasury bonds. So the average payout for a 30-year Treasury note today is 60 cents on every $100. That's all. So if I buy $100 worth of Treasury bonds, my payout is $6 per 100. I'm sorry, 10-year Treasury bonds, $6 per 100. So because that's the safest risk right now, that's the benchmark. So anything less riskier than that has to pay more than 0.6% because it's a riskier investment. So on the scale of risk, Treasury bonds are the safest, so they pay the least amount of money. As you go down the scale of risky assets, then you're supposed to be compensated more because you're taking more risk. So if I buy a stock, I only personally buy American blue chip companies. It makes no sense to buy penny stocks. It makes no sense to buy companies that that hasn't reported quarterly earning statements on or smaller companies that no one has really heard of because they have a great idea. It makes no sense at all. You can get the same amount of growth from American blue chip companies that have been around and that are established. And the risk is less, but the payout is equal to smaller, less heard of companies.
All right, great. That's very interesting. And now I know the difference. I learned a new term, American blue chip companies. So I'm going to take a break. We'll take a break. We'll come back and we'll have you explain what American blue chip companies are so people understand what type of companies they might be investing in.
Okay.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to Systematic Speaks. And thank you for joining us as we learn more about investing in today's volatile market. So John, we talked about American blue chip companies. Tell us what that is. What are American blue chip companies?
American blue chip companies are typically companies that you and I have heard of that are established and have now I'm going to introduce a new term. And so the new term is market cap. A market cap means the total value a company is worth. And that total value is calculated by, very simply, if company ABC had 100 shares and each share was $1, then that company is worth $100. That's the market cap of that company. American blue chip companies are typically larger capital companies that are worth at least $500 billion, like Boeing, Apple, DuPont, all these companies you've heard of, Ford, companies that we use every day that are growing, that are producing. Now Tesla is now a blue chip company now. That's a newer company. So that's an American blue chip company. Companies we've all heard of. On your PC, what kind of PC are you using? Hewlett Packard or?
I have an Apple.
I have an Apple.
Blue chip company. There you go.
We are Apple queens.
Yes, I agree with you. Apple's the best company in America. But go ahead.
All right. So, do you have different models or investment pools depending upon a client's risk tolerance?
Yes, typically you want to, the industry standard is 60-40, meaning 60% of the client portfolio is in equities for blue chip companies, and 40% is in bonds, American 10-year bonds, stuff like that. But recently, our COVID-19 has thrown everything off kilter, and you have to buy companies that are more dividend-paying companies for older people that have less time to recover from any stock fluctuation. So, in other words, if you're 50 years old or 60 years old, and you don't have time for your portfolio to drop to 50% for time to recover before you start needing your money. So you have to be in companies that are less volatile. And those companies typically are utility companies, real estate companies. It's companies like that. So those are less companies that move. In other words, the stock prices don't move as quickly up or down. They just pretty much stay even, and they pay out a dividend.
So, John, you talked a little bit about the investment types, and we talked about IRAs before. So, can you tell me the difference between a 401k and a 401a? There is
no difference in financial wise. I think a 401a is typically what a government employee would have, and a 401k is typically what a private company insurer will have. So if you started a company tomorrow and you wanted to give your employees a retirement account, then you would open a 401k. If you're with the government, that's already been established, so that's a 401a. That's the only difference.
So John, clarity was really good on that, because you hear all these different alphabet soups and we don't know 401a, 401k, 457s. Mm-hmm. So it's good to know that there is no difference other than the industry by which you work.
Precisely. You said it correctly.
Okay, so can you explain to me what your investment philosophy is?
Well, my philosophy is a little different, because I believe in hands-on. I don't believe in having a wide diversity portfolio, because we are in the middle of an economic revolution, meaning for the past 100 years, the primary industries that have done well are gas and oil, automobiles, traditional automobiles, industrials. But now with the revolution of electricity and electric cars, the revolution of technology, Facebook has taken the place of Exxon. Amazon has taken the place of General Electric. So you don't have the traditional industrial slash oil and gas industry. So I typically don't invest in those at all. They're not part of any of my portfolios because those industries I don't think will be around 10, 20 years from now. I believe in industries that would be around is technology, electrical items like Tesla or Nikola, which is another up and coming car. Anything that has to do with online access is where I typically invest because that's the future and that's where I believe companies are growing.
So we hear a lot about index. Explain to our listeners and viewers exactly what the index is, or what is the index?
All right, index has two meanings. Number one, index is basically a group of companies that are listed together. So the S&P 500 is 500 companies that have a small, medium to large capitalization. What I told before, a market cap, and they have 7 sectors inside the S&P 500. You have the energy sector, the health, retail, technology, consumer, and consumer cyclical. Cyclical meaning Home Depot, stuff like that. Consumer defensive is Walmart, things that you always need no matter if there's a pandemic or not. So an index comprises that, so you get an idea of what the entire financial market is doing by looking at the S&P 500 index. Now there's indexing, which means you can buy the index for investment reasons, and I typically don't. Indexing has become a hot topic, like the go-to before COVID-19, but I never liked it because when you buy an index, you're buying good companies and you're buying bad companies. And I'm not a believer of buying bad companies. I'd rather choose 5 or 6 good companies and just buy those than buy an index of over 200 or 300 companies that include some bad ones.
Okay, so you talked about indexes and sectors is another way that I've heard them called. What would you say is the best sector to invest in? I know you spoke about technology and everything technology based, but is that the only thing we should be looking for? I'm looking at telemedicine, which is new, and everybody's moving into that direction. You know, even though we see things sparking up that are becoming what we think as a consumer, wow, this is something that's going to take off and stay steady in the market. Is that where we should go and be thinking? Or is it that everything is out here that's exciting and new for today isn't necessarily the best investment?
So sectors make up an index, first of all. So index will have many different sectors in it, and technology is a sector, and telemedicine is actually part of technology sector now because I don't know if you access your doctor's account, but I did mine through my app on my phone, through iPhone, through iChart, where I was able to virtually have a doctor's appointment. Technology sector has been leading, and as part of that, I like healthcare second, but technology is definitely first. America has managed to produce companies that are worldwide that I typically like to invest in companies that if it were to disappear, the whole world would disappear. Like if Google disappeared in the morning, we're all lost. If Apple disappeared in the morning, we're all lost. If Facebook disappeared in the morning, the world would end. So that's why. So technology is such a behemoth right now that it's hard to advocate for other sectors until they're able to produce. I'm sorry, but as of this moment, technology has not only are they doing the best, but fundamentally speaking, they have the most money on their balance sheets. They're making the most profit. They have the highest margins. It's not even close. So yeah, I'm just for technology primarily.
Okay, so that teaches us a lot. I mean, learning that everything is on the market that looks like it's going to be up and coming may not be the best places for us to put our money. We need to make sure we're investing in solid companies that are going to be around, that provide services that aren't going to go away unless the world ends.
Precisely.
But that said, we don't want this episode to end. Let's take a break and we'll be right back with you. Thanks for joining us as we learn about investing in today's volatile market. So, John, I do have a clarification question. So, I'm not quite sure I understand the division of sectors within an index, sectors within an index. So, things like Uber and Lyft and taxis, would they be considered under the transportation sector?
Taxis is transportation, but Uber and Lyft are technology because you have to access them through an app. You can't just call Uber and get a ride. You have to have an app. You have to have connected. And then the moment that you picked up, they map your ride and then you pay online. So it's not only Uber, but it's the companies that you access like PayPal. That's technology. Square, a payment company, that's technology.
Wow.
So yeah, so if you need an app to access it and you need an iPhone, then it goes on to technology. Whereas I can call a taxi on my landline here and the car will come. That's not technology, you know.
Okay, so it doesn't matter necessarily about the industry, but if you need technology to reach the industry, then it falls in under technology.
Precisely.
So that's why you explained that telemedicine, even though they're providing healthcare services, they're providing it through technology.
Yes.
So it falls under the technology sector.
Yes.
Perfect. So now I know I need to have a diverse portfolio that includes American blue chip companies, 1. 2, technology is the #1 area that I should be looking at because we think about it, everything we do basically now is through technology. Not necessarily the old way of doing it, which is picking up landline phones and actually calling for services.
Right.
Precisely, but let me give you a good example of a non-technology company that is on the cutting edge of technology in healthcare. Like ISRG is a company that makes devices for surgeons to operate on your heart through robotics. So technically that's a technology company, but that fall under healthcare because of the because you don't have to access it through an app, you know. But that's a cutting edge company, but it would still fall under healthcare. You can't access those robotic arms through an app.
Okay, so even within the healthcare industry, if the particular procedure is using technology in order to complete it, then it would go under technology.
Yes, but the actual procedure itself, that you don't need an app for, that would fall under healthcare.
So it's safe to say that there are some companies that cross markets, that go into multiple markets.
Precisely.
So, great. Okay.
Tesla is another good example. Tesla, you need an app to, when you get in the car. Tesla's more a technology company than it is a automobile company.
That's interesting. I guess it is. When you think about it, Tesla is operating off of electronics. So let me ask you another question as we talk about, generate. I know you said you don't invest in utility companies and things of that sort, but what about solar power? That's becoming a new market that everybody's jumping into.
Well, I do for older Americans, older clients, I will invest in utility companies, but solar power is hard to, solar power is very depending on local governments' laws on solar compensation or energy compensation. When Obama was in office, they were giving bonuses or paying people to have solar applied to their homes. Under the current administration, that went away. So the solar power companies lost a lot of money. And so if you had invested in them, then you would have lost a lot of money as well. I typically don't invest in solar power companies unless it's Tesla, because they haven't proven to be solid investments over 10 years. I'm waiting for a company to come out that can prove it can make money in any legal environment that's presented.
So, John, do you invest in the pharmaceutical market?
I typically don't, because One day you can wake up and a company can be sued, or their drug can give people heart attacks, all of a sudden drop 50%. If someone wants to invest in a pharmaceutical market, I would say invest in a pharmaceutical index. That's when indexing will come in, so that you can alleviate or you can mitigate your risk. But they do have a section within pharmaceutical that I like, and it's called biotechnology. And that biotechnology is where companies are creating vaccines for COVID-19 or vaccines for any new things we have coming up. And that is doing really, really well. But typically I don't like pharmaceuticals because it's such a heavy investment on research and development, and it's hard to maintain that over time. It's like going to Vegas. I don't like going to Vegas with my stocks.
Okay, so question. So does that mean that you would not advise us to be running after companies that are running to create their vaccine for COVID-19? Because you would think that the person who hits that market, who gets that first vaccine, that is successful, you'd be rich and be able to quit your job.
Let's evaluate that, because if you're rich and quit your job and Americans are dying, they go, why are you charging so much for your medicine? Why are you trying to get rich off of Americans dying? And so that would be a whole political firestorm that would lower the cost of the drug to the point where it wouldn't be profitable for the company.
So you mean death isn't an investment index?
No. So okay. I say stay away from those companies. Stay away from them, 100%.
I guess we need to stick with being Apple girls then. We won't look to make money and be rich and quit our jobs off of the death of other people.
No, never. So John, how does one decide what level of investment risk they are comfortable with?
That's a really good question. I would say that you have to, you should invest what you don't need to live off of, like need, not want, but need. So if you're able to invest in, if you're able to put aside money for an investment and it goes down, then it shouldn't hinder you from paying your bills. As long as your bills are paid and you're living a comfortable lifestyle, then your best way to make money in investing is investing for the long term with an advisor that can help maneuver you through the market to give you the best returns. So if you need the money for your bills or to live off of, then that's not your investment money. Your investment money is money over and above that.
Well, I've heard financial advisors say, don't invest any more than you can afford to lose. And so would that be something that we need to base the market off of? Because I might not need the money in terms of my everyday living expenses, but it might not be money that I can throw away either and not afford to have back, especially if I'm planning on using the money for retirement.
Well, no, I agree with you that no, you can't afford to, no, you shouldn't lose any money. I mean, the number one rule for our industry is don't lose the client's money. So I agree with you, but investment does come with risk, and if you want to make money off of risk, then the risk is losing it, and so you have to. And the best way that I can mitigate that loss is technology and blue chip companies that you invest in, that if they were to go out of business, the whole world would have to end. That's kind of like my mantra or my thesis.
All right, so we've now learned that scared money doesn't make any money. So we can't be afraid to enter into the market. We just have to make sure that we're investing in good companies that don't lose money.
Yes,
and that hire a financial planner to help manage our money that has the experience of being able to tell us what those risks really are, rather than us trying to guess. Some of the major companies that we think make a lot of money from a market value, just because they do business, doesn't mean it's the best for us to invest in.
Precisely.
Stay tuned as we get into more questions and learn more about investing in today's volatile market.